Little Horse and Big Conversation. Welcome to Little Horse and Big Conversation, where we give them their say, let the horse guide the way. Here at Little Horse and Big Conversation, we have the choice, so let's give them a voice. Here at Little Horse and Big Conversation, Little Horse and Big Conversation.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Little Horse Big Conversation podcast with your hosts, me, Amy Mitchell, and my co-host, Ross Cooper. Ross, how are you doing?
I know where this is leading already. I knew it wasn't gonna be that easy. How has your week been, Amy? Any adventures? Anything interesting that you want to share with our lovely guests?
No, my week's been really good actually. I've had a very busy week. I've trimmed about 30 horses this week, and I like to do 20, but I've done about 30 horses this week. But it's been really good. I've had some really nice sessions with some horses. Got some really nice kind of feedback from the horses about the trimming. So yeah, it's been a good week, and I'm off on my holidays up to Scotland next week. So yeah, feeling good, feeling good. How has your
Ready
week been, Ross?
How much can I continue to deflect?
Come on, you're gonna have to admit all to the
I'm gonna
listening
have
public.
on time. Okay. So, I've had a pretty good week. But I know what everyone is waiting for is another story about what's happened to me and my car. So, very good week of lessons. However, last Friday, now you know how we all sometimes get those feelings where we just shouldn't be doing something, or there's just that little grumble going, that's not really where you want to go. So I was driving to a client's and I was just getting quite a strong feeling that I should reschedule. I was only a few minutes behind, so I couldn't really fathom where this was coming from. So I carried on and I parked on their field like I've been doing for years. And I distinctly remember, because everyone keeps on questioning my sanity with this, I distinctly remember before I got out the car that I was drawn to look at the handbrake. Okay. So commenced with said session. I love your facial
Now,
expression.
I'm just gonna say here, did you look at the handbrake, or did you physically put your hand on the handbrake and check?
I physically put the handbrake on.
Uh-huh.
It was in gear, and I
Uh-huh.
looked at it
All right. Okay.
before I got out the car. It's the last visual.
I'm just going
Anyway,
to point out to the listeners here, I don't believe this part of the story, but carry on, Ross.
so we'll let the listeners decide whether the universe intervened or it was a mechanical error. So commenced with said session. Said session is going really well. And then all of a sudden, there is a really, really loud twang. I turn around and see my car beginning to start to gain momentum, rolling backwards down the paddocks. It then continues to go through three electric tape paddocks, two sides of an arena, a boundary fence, and then is finally stopped by fence line number 7.
And what you want
And
to point out is that the two sides of the arena were post and rail fencing.
yes, both sides of the arena were post and rail. So was the boundary fence, and it was stopped by obviously a very sturdy seventh fence. Now, I can honestly, I really wish someone had recorded this because I literally, the only thing that I said was, "Oh no." That was literally my response. And then two things went through my mind. The first one was, I'm not going to get over there to stop it in time, bearing in mind I was about 50 meters away.
Oh
And
God.
the second was, I wonder when my car is actually going to stop. The alarm didn't actually start going off until it went down the bank into the arena, then started screaming at me. I'm like, mate, I hear you. I hear you. You're in some trouble. Let's let's help when we can.
Oh dear.
Um, But do you know
Yeah.
what? Gotta say, credit to said training approach. Both the horses in the field were elevated, was like, whoa, what's happening? But they were a couple of minutes, they were absolutely fine. Back off grazing, horses secured, fencing sorted, onto the insurance, everything in the pipeline within the first couple of hours.
See,
Happy days.
this is how to
It
put a
would only
positive spin onto a somewhat tragic situation.
But every but anyone who anyone who follows my updates online or knows me is going to be there going, just like you did. How? How does this happen? If it's going to happen, it will happen to you. I
Exactly. Had
really
I heard the story and not known who it was, I would have had absolutely zero hesitation in going, well, that obviously happened to Ross Cooper.
professionally sound, mechanically unreliable.
Oh
So
dear. Yeah.
yes, don't worry. Amy has not escaped this unscathed because when something happens, I will bring it up. Don't you guys worry.
I'm going to keep all
Amy's
my
now full of
stories to
nervous
myself.
laughter.
Oh
So,
dear God.
yes, just to end that, the car I thought escaped unscathed, but my exhaust is apparently now in two parts. So it is in for a little bit of TLC this coming Tuesday.
Amazing. Amazing. So yes, I thought we couldn't possibly not share that that particular little tale of woe
Of course,
before
of
we
course.
get into the big topic of the day. Um,
So, what is that?
so today we are going to talk about social license in the equine world. And this is something that Ross and I have been kind of back and forthing about for a while because every time something crops up in the press, we're sort of like, well, we should probably be having a podcast episode on this. But yeah, I think we've kind of decided that the time has come to delve into it. And it's one of those things that it kind of touches on a number of facets. You know, there's ethics, there's tradition, and it's all around public perception and really the kind of evolution of the horse world and changing of perceptions and what what may have in the past been deemed as permissible, changing welfare standards, etc. You know, things are moving on and things are changing, and I guess you can look at it in some ways a bit like a driving license if you want to give it an analogy. And you know, each time one of these big issues blows up with a famous folk in the press, it's kind of like adding points onto the driver's license, I guess. And you know, at some point that license will be removed. So, you know, where are we at? What's you know, where are things going? Yeah, it's I think it's an interesting one. You know, the public has, I think, less and less trust in all sorts of aspects of the world. And the horse industry, although I don't like applying the word industry to it, but the horse industry is you know is certainly at the forefront of a lot of that.
And I think we see that very much so because we're in it. It's
Mm,
our world. So, you know, what pops up on our news feeds, what pops up in day-to-day conversation, what shows on our algorithm, it's because that, you know, that's our bubble that we're in. Even
yeah.
though like we have these conversations quite regular, we're not really in those circles. I know you feel as fortunate as I do that I'm surrounded by really great professionals that are very much aligned with
Mm,
what we want the world to look like for horses and how we work with them, but also, by extension of that, the changes that we want to see.
yeah. Yeah, I think
So
so.
I think for social licensing, so social licensing is also known as social license to operate, and it's one of those where I think people can still be a little bit confused about what it actually is.
Mm,
So Amy, I know you found a really nice definition of it, and I found a couple also. So, effectively, social licensing is the public acceptance of an activity, society's acceptance or approval of something within a community. And I think with social license, it's heavily coming into question because we are seeing so much publicized about effectively negligence and neglect within welfare standards,
Mm.
primarily at top level competition. And not just, we're not just seeing it as equestrians, people who aren't in that world are seeing it too.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, I think when you first mention welfare standards, I think people's initial image is a poor little pony stood on its own in a field with no food to eat and, not enough water and skin and bone and all that kind of thing. But I think and that obviously is a massive issue, but I think there is now a different lens being applied where, we're starting to look at horses that are allegedly treated like kings, etc., but who are not having any of their innate needs met. So, being stabled much of the time, not having any freedoms, um, and those kinds of things. I think, we as a community of horse people are becoming much more aware. At the end of the day, the horses don't have a voice in this debate. We are the ones that have to have the conversations and to take the responsibility of showing respect and empathy to the animal,
Mm.
and hopefully respect and empathy to each other in achieving that, I guess.
Yeah. And I think, just staying with the welfare aspect, I think you made a really good point. It's the perception of welfare. We've
Mm,
got guidelines out there, but the thing is, guidelines vary depending on organization, depending on conditioning as well, and also on perception. So I think we've referred to the Animal Welfare Act 2006 in previous podcasts. And, that's a piece of government legislation where it's basically establishing a legal duty for of care for people who have animals, regardless whether we're talking about dogs or we're talking about horses, and that's a piece of government legislation. Now, when it comes to any kind of sport, whether we're looking at it as grassroots or high level competition, each
mm.
organization is going to have their own code of conduct and what they would class as welfare standards. And I think it's very much like we were saying, like you said earlier, there's multiple facets to this and multiple ways that people can look at this situation
Mm.
and how to apply it because you've got the elements of going, okay, well, I've grown up in a competition background. Therefore, my horse is fed, watered, it gets the best feed, it gets the best saddle, doesn't want for anything, but potentially is competed and air quote worked 5 or 6 times a week, is kept in an isolated paddock, no real enrichment or environmental needs met, no real potential. And this is, I'm being generalistic here, I'm
Yeah,
not being
yeah,
specific.
yeah.
As a horse, are those needs being met as a horse for then appropriate training to be built on top of that? A lot of the time, that's not what we see.
No, no,
So someone
absolutely.
could look at that situation and go, well, the horse is looked after, fed, cared for, vets build saddles and so on. But actually, for a horse, those baseline needs aren't being met. And then you'll have someone looking at it from a potential different perspective, going, okay, you've got four calves which are covered in mud out in a field, brambles in the hair, and go, they're not being looked after. When, we do see elements of neglect like that for sure. But again, it's down to perception. It's down to your conditioning, and it's down to what you've been involved in. So I think there are so many different ways that we can go with this, which, we've decided to open up the nest of vipers, so let's go for it.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think I think you can kind of cut it in half. I think you've got the high level, very under the public spotlight competition kind of facet. And then
Yes.
you've got the, to use the term, sort of everyday horse owner aspect. And I think, this applies to both. And I think neither should be ignored. I mean, from the competition side of things, I will state now, I am not an expert on any competition stuff. It's not something I've ever been involved in. It's not things I don't understand a lot of it. So, I'm not a person to be a good commentator on it, but equally I can recognize pain face on a horse. And when you see things like people getting banned for excessive whipping of horses, etc. I mean, not wishing to drag names into it too much, but I think the Charlotte Dujardin situation is an interesting one. Obviously, there was that video of her hitting a horse with a whip in a training session multiple times, and she was banned for that. Not wishing to really get into too much of a discussion about the individual event, I sort of feel, what could be the legacy from that? Because this has happened, and who knows whether it was a one-off incident or not. None of us have got any evidence to say either way. But it's happened, and she's now in this situation. I feel like in some ways that's given her a massive opportunity to become a really big advocate for horse welfare and doing things right.
Yes.
Because she has got such a massive influence with well, me being middle-aged now, but like with the younger generation of competition riders and horse riders, to be able to say, actually, yeah, I'm going to hold my hands up. This was not something I should have been doing. I do really regret it. I've spent some time thinking about it, and actually, I'm now going to be really transparent, and I'm going to advocate doing things in a really fair and horse-centered way. And I think that would be very powerful.
Agreed. I think to be able to do that in the public eye takes a tremendous amount of courage and insight to be able to do. I have so much respect for anyone out there, horse owner or professional, who puts, air quote, how they have always done it aside to look for a better way. And I've probably said it before that I have a lot of respect for Warwick, as to my knowledge, he was one of the more publicised horsemen that completely changed his way of working so openly. And it's great to see more people looking at this line of work with more openness and curiosity. But I think it depends, again, in different areas. Like over here, we're British. We can be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Stubborn?
I don't know, maybe. Is that the word you're looking for? You tell me.
We kind of put a stiff upper lip on and just sort of get on with it. It's sort of a bit like bury your feelings, it's happened, carry on.
Yeah.
Again, being a bit generalistic with that. But I do think times are changing with how we become aware of ourselves, what we can change, and obviously how it influences our horses, because it's all on us. Just elaborating on the situation with Charlotte. So Charlotte had said in a public announcement that it was out of character for her to behave in the way that she did. Now, for me, looking at this situation objectively, there are two elements that stand out. The first being that she has acknowledged her behaviour, for whatever reason that may be, and she must be held to account, but not liable to a witch hunt. The behaviour towards the horse was abuse, and no horse should ever be subject to that treatment ever. It isn't excusable. We are all human, we all get things wrong, but there is a difference between a momentary lapse in judgment and behaviour that is betrayed by repetition and application. And in addition to that, one of my thoughts was, why has the video been sat on for a number of years? Because I can't believe that a video has not seen the light of day by anyone for 5 years. So that begs the question to me, what was the motivation behind leaking a video like that at that point in time? Because that doesn't correlate to having horse welfare in mind just to sit on it.
I mean, to a point, I almost don't care what the person's motivation was. You know, it's
the fact that it's happened.
It's the thing that's happened, yeah. And you know, who knows what their motivation was. I don't think it matters really. I mean, I think you know, if we look at what happened at the Tokyo Olympics with the modern pentathlon horse, and the lady that punched the horse in the face, because the horse wasn't doing what she wanted it to. And that, you know, that's now been pulled from the Olympics. The equestrian part of it has been pulled from the Olympics.
Rightly so.
Rightly so. And but then it comes down to this, if you know, what are you driven by? And in fact, I was talking to somebody about this other day when I was chatting to them about, you know, the fact that we were going to be discussing this topic on the podcast. And saying, I think with things the way they are, and as I say, this is my opinion as an outsider because I'm not involved in competition. It's not my bag. But I think if you are really driven to succeed and to get the acclaim, and all the trophies, and you know, to be seen as number one, it's difficult. I think it's very difficult to do that at the same time as really putting the horse's welfare first.
Agreed, because
I feel
think
like they're two different goals.
Can those worlds meet?
I don't know. I mean, I feel, and again, you know, I'm sure people will come after me for saying this because it's not my area of expertise, so probably I don't really know what I'm talking about. But this is just as an outsider's observation. You look at 5-star 3-day eventing, for example, the stuff that those horses can do is incredible. But they're such big, dangerous fences. Is that necessary? Do we need to be pushing things that far? But then I guess, you know, once it has been that far and it's been that much of a spectacle to look at, and that, you know, is the funding going to be lost if it becomes, you know, less exciting and becomes more of a admiring the technical skills? To admire those technical skills, I think you need to be someone that really understands the sport. Whereas when it's just like massive, big, flashy fences that people can go, excuse my language, but fucking hell, look at that. You know, that's amazing. It attracts a much wider audience and therefore brings more money in. So I don't know. Is that part of the motivation for it? If it was made safer and less, you know, less strain on the horse over time. I mean, I again, I don't know. I might be talking out of my rear end here, but I'm assuming there are lots of injuries.
There are.
Many of these horses at that level are not going on to have long and healthy lives into retirement. I'm sure some of them do, but I'm sure there's an awful lot that don't. Is that okay that we're doing that because that's what we want to do as humans?
Of course it's not.
Should we be making it so that, yes, I'm not saying ban these things. I think that would be a real shame, but make it less challenging, you know, easier on the body, safer, that kind of thing. That for me, I feel is like would be kind of a nice compromise.
Yes. I mean, one thing that I get very commonly asked, and you bring up eventing, is about thoroughbred racing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very controversial topic. So I don't think racing should be banned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I don't think racing should be banned is because we would lose the thoroughbred and there would be an absolutely massive influx of unwanted horses into the market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think racing should be improved to meet higher welfare standards for the horses. That would mean later age of training because I I do strongly disagree with how they are treated and trained and managed at a young age. And like you were talking about with the fences, I think the extent of what they are asked to do
Yeah.
is highly detrimental. Horses die in the Grand National.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
If
absolutely.
people were dying in
Yeah.
races, there would be a. Do you know what I mean? Can
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
boggling. But
Absolutely.
horses dying every year or two just seems to kind of hit the headlines, then it scoots under.
Yeah. And I'm sure,
So
you see the same as I do. In my job, I see a lot of horses that have come out the back of the racing industry.
yeah,
Lots of people with thoroughbreds that are, from my point of view, like, wanting to improve their feet. Generally, the thoroughbreds that I see, and having owned one, come out with what people talk about as being shite thoroughbred feet. But I mean, they're not genetically shite feet. It's a product of the environment. And you see all the broken bodies and the kissing spine and the emotional issues, and it's really sad. But there are people out there that I think are doing things better. There's a lady that I follow on Facebook, Joe Davis Racing. And she genuinely looks to put the horse's welfare first. And I think if there were more people like her around, things could be different. For me, I like, because I know there's always people out saying, well, we should ban this and we should ban that, and I don't think banning. I'm with you on this. I don't think banning things is the answer, but I think improving the way that things are done
yeah.
is definitely more of an answer.
And I think, look, I think public opinion is changing too with these things, regardless whether you are within, the horse world or not. I mean, did you ever see the film Blackfish
No,
about Tillicum? If you haven't seen it, watch it because it's a really, really insightful film.
I have to say
So
I've
Black,
seen it advertised, and I've never wanted to watch it because I thought it would make me sad.
it's it is a sad film. It's a docu-film and it is sad, but there's also some really beautiful moments in there. And I remember when Blackfish first came out, and I did cry watching it, unsurprisingly. Um, but I think that really started to turn the tide of how people viewed animals in captivity, specifically whales and dolphins. And, I can't remember when that came out. We're probably maybe, was it late? Was it around 2017? We're 7, 8 years on, and look at how people are responding to places like SeaWorld.
Yeah,
You know, the,
yeah,
you know, the head count is down, and people are more for conservation-based approaches and not keeping certain animals in captivity.
yeah,
So I think that, there's that level of, let's go with consciousness awakening.
yeah,
There seems to be
yeah,
quite that shift of change in how people are perceiving what it is we do and questioning it,
yeah, yeah,
which I think is really healthy, but it becomes such a difficult one to mediate, manage, and change because, like you've already said, a lot of high level competition and a lot of neglect that goes overlooked is driven by finances
yeah,
and
yeah.
sponsorship
And
and
I, I
money.
think I think the difficulty with the equestrian world as well is I I mean, I don't know the history of how long dolphins and so on were kept in captivity, but I suspect it was in the great scheme of things, a relatively short period of history. Whereas our relationship with horses goes back a very long way.
Yes.
So I think that the the dolphin thing, I think it's quite easy to step back and look at that and go, what the hell are we doing here? This is wrong. But because, because of the relationship that we have had with horses and the domestication and how involved they've been in our lives as two species over such a long period of time, it's harder to kind of unpick and
We're a
to
lot more entwined, aren't we?
yeah. And I think, I think it would be a very, very sad world if, people no longer had horses and were no longer able to ride horses and that kind of thing. Because I think it's a lovely interspecies relationship. And I think it would be really sad to lose that. But I think it is difficult to decide where to draw the lines on what's okay and what isn't sometimes. And I feel
Yes.
like we, as individuals, as horse owners, as people working with horses, I think we all need to try and kind of uphold our own social license. I think we need to be looking at transparency in what we're doing.
Yes.
I think we need to be open-minded and able, sort of willing to, when new information comes to light, to adopt new welfare practices when something comes up and we think actually, your eyes are open to something and suddenly you think, okay, this would be a better way of doing it. And I think something that's really important that we, again, as a species, I think find quite difficult is to listen to criticism in a positive way and to try and not be defensive about it and to listen to it and think, actually, is this fair criticism and is there something that I could be doing better?
Yes. Yep. And
Because it comes down to all the little things, doesn't it? The way that we, all the things that we've talked about in other podcast episodes, the way that we keep horses, the way that we do or don't allow them to interact with others, all that meeting their innate needs, but also not using a saddle on them that we know doesn't fit properly because it's too expensive to buy one that does. So the horse suffers. Not buying shite feed and the horse having gut issues, not allowing them freedom of movement, and all those things that have a real impact on that animal's physical and emotional well-being. We all as individuals have the power to make choices and improvements in those situations.
and how how do we mediate the difference in perception of what good care is and what good welfare standards are? Because I not wanting to traverse over old ground, but can you remember back in June, and I actually wrote a post about it, about an Australian Olympic rider that was suspended. What was his name? Um, Heath Ryan.
Okay.
So there was some footage that was released of him repeatedly whipping a 6-year-old horse.
Right.
And in 30 seconds, the whip is used 42 times.
Jesus.
Okay. So the reason that I'm bringing this one up is because Ryan actually released a statement and he said that the way the whip was applied by him was not done so flippantly, was part of a rescue mission, one of which had the horse's best interest at the sole consideration and was, paraphrasing here, successful for everyone except me, because obviously he'd been recorded. The horse had always been described as beautifully bred, but had always been a problem child and would just stop, with the exhibited behaviour exhibiting escalated until the result was the unfortunate hospitalisation of his rider at the time. So with this, with this now being described as I've done this and it was a rescue, apparently the horse is now thriving in a loving and competitive home with an exciting future. Now, this person has applied this method and it's perceived as a rescue mission, which, given both our facial expressions, that's hard to try and understand.
Yeah. I mean, I okay, so
So,
I
objectively, how do we mediate perceptions like that, which apply abusive training methods to try and get a result?
yeah, I don't think there's any excuse for that.
I think that's a person issue. I think that is an
Yeah.
individual
Yeah.
issue.
I mean, that's clearly wrong. I mean, I don't think there's any, there's no argument to be had there. I feel it's a very strange justification. I mean, I am not someone who believes that you should never put boundaries in place or say no, or if something happens to be able to say, actually, that particular piece of behavior is unacceptable. That's not what we're doing here. I don't have an issue with that. But I do have an issue with somebody hitting a horse 40 odd times. Crikey. You know.
Boundaries are healthy. Every healthy relationship needs boundaries, but
Yeah.
we know better now, so we need to do better. And I generally feel that dressing up abusive training,
Yeah.
as effectively a rescue mission, just sullies all the work being done to promote higher welfare standards. And everyone out there who's trying to promote ethical training
Yeah.
within the industry, and so, someone again with quite a lot of influence going, well, I'm doing this, I'm not sorry about it because X, Y, and Z. A lot of people may read that and go, oh, that's absolutely fine. I'll just whip my horse a couple of times. My horse behaves or responds. It's absolutely fine. It's validating someone's already heavily conditioned perception. And I'm definitely not saying this with the premise that, how I do is right and how someone else does is wrong. But we know more about we know more about welfare, we know more about equine needs, and we know what result and what response a horse will give as a result of how we apply something. And the information's out there. There's actual studies on it. You
Yeah.
know, and we can see it in our horses' bodies. And I think this is a big one that we see. We know, like you said, equine pain phase. We know grimace scale. Our horse will always show us behaviors when they are worried, when they're scared, when they're confident, when they're content. Their bodies will show us what they're using correctly, what they're not using correctly. Things will show up in their feet. We have got markers on
Mm.
the horse's body, which will give us indicators as to how they are being trained and how
Yeah.
they feel about that.
Yeah.
So, looking at these videos that do come to light, we can go, okay, that's 60 seconds. But looking at that horse overall, there will be indicators of how that horse responds and how that horse moves and how that horse carries itself,
Mm.
which give you an insight into how that horse has been trained.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bodies
Absolutely.
don't lie.
No, no, absolutely. It's an ongoing thing, isn't it?
And the horse is the only one that is going to help us improve the welfare standards by looking at them as horses. But
Yeah.
it's us that need to put the change because effectively, it's really sad to say, but they don't have a say in this matter.
No,
They should,
exactly.
but they don't.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? We choose to have them in our lives, so we have to take that responsibility. Um, and I think, going back to the everyday person,
Yes.
the normal horse owner, and the same with us, every time somebody sees you, me, every horse owner, every time somebody sees you interacting with a horse, you are shaping you are shaping the story of social license.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. We're
So
setting an example.
exactly, it's that whole thing of doing the right thing even when nobody's watching.
Integrity.
Exactly. You know, you set your own standards and then you behave by them. I mean, you know, I'm sure we've all seen professionals handling horses, and you know, not just horse trainers, but other professionals handling horses in ways that are verging on the abusive. Um, and it's not okay. And we've, you know, we've talked the being your horse's advocate episode about, you know, about that kind of thing. But it all fits into this kind of social license paradigm, and you know, having public trust, it I think the buck stops with each and every one of us.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really nice quote by Gandhi, which I've just Googled because I wanted to check. It was
Yeah,
by Gandhi, which is be the change you want to see in the world.
100%. Yeah,
And I think integrity is at the heart of horsemanship.
yeah. And nobody's perfect, you know. We all do things from time to time that we'd look back on and think I could have handled that differently. But I think
And
that's the
that's
thing, isn't it? You know, you reflect on things that haven't gone the way that perhaps you'd have wanted them to, and you do better the next time. Um, and have an awareness of your weaknesses. So you know, I try and make sure that if I'm working with a horse and they're being really snatchy or whatever, and I can feel myself getting frustrated, I will put the foot down and I'll step away for a couple of minutes and just sort of, you know, breathe in some fresh air and allow both me and the horse time to kind of get our heads together and start again. Because it would be so easy in that moment just to get cross and do something that you would later regret. It would be so easy. You know, I pride myself on not getting cross with horses that I work with, but that, you know, if you've got a day when you're tired and you're running late and your body's hurting and you've got loads more still to do and things and the weather's shit and you know, just everything, we all get days like that where everything kind of feels like it's conspiring against you, and then you're working with this horse that's got massive overgrown feet and the owner hasn't bothered to pick the feet out, and it's just snatching its leg and so on. It would be so easy sometimes just to lose your temper. But you have to hold yourself to a higher standard and recognize those emotions building up and think this is not the person that I want to be. So I'm going to just give myself a moment and either say, actually, do you know what? We're not doing this today.
And that's incredibly healthy. That shows that you've got such a level of awareness with that. But like you said, you're also going, okay, couple of minutes, and you're shaping how that person is seeing you as a professional, but also that on that subconscious or even conscious level for a lot of people, they're going, ah, okay, well, next time they're struggling, I'm going to take a few minutes and then head back.
Yeah. Because otherwise you're only escalating things, aren't you? You know, it's
And
never
that
going to
never,
get better from that situation. If you continue, it's never going to get better.
no, never, never. I think that's definitely something that I recognize as well, is that I think because I hold myself, rightly or wrongly, to such a high standard, not in a not in a trumpet blowing way, but how I want to apply and work with the horses that I see,
Mm.
I have such a high standard of how, what's the word I'm looking for? Might need to help me out here. I've only had one cup of matcha today, so I think I'm flagging. Um, I think I hold how I work in such a high standard that sometimes if my timing is slightly off,
Yeah.
or if maybe I've just applied something slightly differently and gone, why did I do that? You know, it can literally be minute, but I can be quite hard on myself for missing something so subtle. And that's because I put myself on a high standard to the quality of the way that I want to work.
But that's what you learn from, isn't it?
Yes,
That's
yes,
how we, none of us are, nothing is perfect. And I think if what you're doing is perfect every time, I feel like you're not pushing yourself. You've got in a comfort zone and you're not, you know, you're not evolving.
no,
It's through the little mistakes, and through the things that don't go quite right that I think the biggest the biggest lessons are learned and the biggest steps taken forward. Although this is going off on a slightly different tangent to the to the topic in hand, but yeah, I don't think,
yeah,
we should be beating ourselves up about those sorts of things.
no. And I noticed that timing, and I think everyone may relate to this, just like you've said, when you're slightly more tired, when you're a little bit more spent, you'll feel your timing, how you come across is very slightly off.
Mm,
And just taking that time, it's that level of awareness, like you say. I think awareness, knowledge, and information is going to be key to how we make changes going forward. And like Gandhi says, the change starts with you. We need to be the change that we want to see in the world.
yeah. And as I say, I think it, it would be really sad if this great long history of our relationship and uh, the way that we have been with horses for so long, if we were to lose that, I think that would be very sad. But there does need to be some evolution as to how it goes forward, because we've gone from the horse working for us when, before we had cars and the Industrial Revolution and so on, to it now being very much as a sport. So it's a different paradigm. And I think, we therefore, and in some ways that's still quite, in the whole history of our lives with horses, this current status quo is still pretty new.
Yes.
But we've got a lot more information now, so we can we can use that information and we can most certainly do better. And then surely that, this lovely relationship can continue and flourish for forevermore between the two species, but in a much more empathetic and
Horse-centered way.
conciliatory, yeah, absolutely, way, so that the horse gets what they need as well as us getting what we want.
Yeah. It's as long as it's a compromise that has the horse's integrity at the center of it and not a compromise where they become compromised.
Yeah, I like that. That feels like a good note to end on.
Well, I think in a year's time we should revisit this episode and see where things are at.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's
Interesting,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. Times
Yeah.
are changing, you know, and some good changes, some not so good. So let's see. Yeah, let's see where it's at.
Watch this space.
Yeah. Excellent.
Right.
Thank you all very much for listening. And we will be back very soon with another episode.
See you soon.